Welcome back, everyone, to the Little Brain Campaign podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauren LaRose. I am a board-certified child and adolescent psychiatrist and adult psychiatrist. And in this podcast, I like to talk to people who are involved in mental health care, physical health care of kids and their caregivers. And I especially like to talk to people who are working outside of the conventional medical model and doing things that are really interesting and innovative. So I have the honor today of talking to Rebecca Louth from Waves Matter LLC in Virginia, and she is going to break down neurofeedback for us so that I can understand it better and you can understand it better. So thank you for being here with us, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so tell us, give us a little rundown of how you got to this point in your career and how you got involved in neurofeedback.
Okay. My undergraduate was psychology, and then I got my master's in education. I began in 1998 teaching, loved it. And then for the next 19 years, I was in and out of the classroom in different forms, whether it was in the classroom, whether it was teaching teachers across Virginia, or then my last position was a student life coordinator in a middle school. And my job there was basically to help kids be more successful. So whatever was getting in their way of success, I got to work with them to try to help them move forward and past it. So it was in that position that I was introduced to neurofeedback. I had no idea what it was. And then I decided, okay, well, I'm just going to try it on for myself, because if this is something that I can suggest to teachers or students or parents, I wanted to be able to share something that was, not medicine, that might be able to be helpful. So I went through my own training for several months. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, I'm finally able to get out of my own way. I can't imagine what this would do for other people. And so my husband honestly was very supportive of saying, well, if this is something you're supposed to do, let's start taking classes. So I went to North Carolina and took a class. I went to California and took a class. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this feels like the next best step of education. Instead of helping kids cope and manage, I was able to finally help them heal what was causing whatever the problems were. So in 2017, I opened up Waves Matter, and I love it. Every single day, I get to be able to work with people, 5 years old until their 80s, and, all walks of life, to be able to feel better. And it's not like neurofeedback is not happening to them, it's happening with them. And they begin to feel better because of what they are doing. And the teacher in me loves that.
Okay. Break down for us, what is neurofeedback in the most simplest terms, and how does it work?
Okay, so to take a pretty complex approach, the simplest way I know how to describe it, neurofeedback is simply holding up a mirror in front of the brain so that the brain can see what it's doing. It doesn't know how to do anything differently or process anything differently other than the way it's always done it until it sees what it's doing. The brain seeks novelty. It wants to learn. It wants to be more efficient and effective, but it doesn't know how to do that until it sees what it's doing. So the client has several sensors on, at least with my particular system that I use. There are 4 sensors that they have on. One's in the top of their head, and that's the resistance, and that helps to keep the training to be equal on the left side of the brain as well as the right side of the brain. And then one behind their ear, just to make everything grounded. So let me reiterate, there's nothing going into the brain. There's nothing invasive about neurofeedback. It's simply reading the brain waves at the sites that we're training and showing the brain what it's doing so that we can create something called neuroplasticity, which is simply flexibility within the brain waves so that the brain can respond to life however is needed. With my first responders, yes, we want them to be on high alert when they're at work, but we don't necessarily want them on high alert when they're at dinner with their family. So that neuroplasticity allows the brain, therefore the mind and the behaviors, to respond as they choose rather than just react.
Okay. So it's like helping the brain learn to like shift gears basically depending on what activity or task that they're doing.
Correct.
Um, and I know that there's like different ways that different providers do neurofeedback. The
Mhm.
program that you use is like a computer game or like a movie. Like what is it exactly that they're
Okay,
working
so
on?
that's kind of a funny, it's not a funny question, but when I went through my own training, I played a game. And something about me, I love winning. And whenever, like each week I would go by, if I didn't get more points each time, I was literally sad. So when I went through my own training, I wanted to find a system that would make it so that everyone feels successful. Especially, when I first
Mhm.
started, I thought I was just going to be working with kids. And I knew if I was sad about my dinosaur not going through a hoop and getting more points, I could only imagine how it would affect the kids. So in the research,
Yeah.
I found a system that it's an infralow signet system, and it allows people to be able to watch a movie. And anyone, any age, can feel successful watching a movie. So that's
Mhm.
why I went with that system.
Okay. Okay. And is it like each time that they do it, is it the same movie? Is it like a different movie?
So it's funny. I joke with them. The hardest part of neurofeedback is deciding on a movie because you're watching it. We pick up each week from where we left off. So if it's a weekly session, it might be a couple months before you finish the movie. Of course, I can let them change if they
Mhm.
want to, but they love to be able to choose. There's more engagement when they get to choose what they want to be able to watch.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. And these are movies that are like specifically designed for neurofeedback. This isn't like a Disney princess movie, right?
It's a Disney princess movie if that's what you want to watch. So any DVD, yeah, it's wonderful.
Oh.
Yeah, so if I have lots of options for them to choose, but some people are like, "Oh my gosh, I want to bring in my own." That's totally fine. I can use any DVD that they bring in, which again, it
Oh,
feels
interesting.
really, yeah, it's really cool.
Okay. Okay. So it's just like the you're reading like the brain waves, which is basically like the brain's response to watching this movie. Okay. Like the brain's ability to pay attention, respond to like changes in the scene or whatever. And then like how is it training the brain to um fire differently, if that
Okay,
makes
great
sense?
question. So let's just talk about a consultation. When people come in for the first time for a consultation, I explain to them exactly basically what I shared with you as far as what is neurofeedback, how does it work, so that they feel comfortable and they say, yes, I'd love to try this. So we'll do about 10 to 15 minutes of a session. And while they're watching the movie, what happens is that the screen gets a little bit smaller, it gets kind of fuzzy. And of course, like the first time they do it, they're like, what's wrong? What am I doing wrong? And that's not at all what's wrong. It means the brain's doing what we're asking it to do. It's seeing what it's doing, and then it starts to correct the different brainwave activity. Whether we need to lower the
Mhm.
arousal of someone or increase the arousal of someone, there's no way for someone to do this wrong. There's no way.
Right.
With the system that I use, and I think it's probably because of my teaching background, I love it because our job is, it's a partnership with me, the client. Based on how they're feeling, I adjust what I need to do on my end, whether it's lowering the frequency, which is how far into the brain we're going. So the lower the frequency, the further into the brain, the higher the frequency, the
Mhm.
further out. And that's all about based on
Okay.
their arousal level. What we're aiming for is for the client to feel calm and alert at the same time. We know what those
Mhm.
words mean, but we don't know what it feels like until we learn what it feels like. Like I thought calm
Yeah.
was like right before I passed out and went to sleep. I had no idea calm could be having an intense conversation with my 21-year-old and being able to be calm and alert during that time. I didn't know it existed.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
we have all these words that describe how we feel, but let's take the word anxiety, right? Anxiety presents itself very different for everyone. So with this particular system, I'm able to meet them where they are. It's not a formula. I'm not
Mhm.
plugging in she's anxious and then the system does it. I'm literally working with every single client to find exactly what their frequency is, where they train, where they feel calm and alert.
Okay. Okay. Um, okay. So it's it's really interesting that because I think like in my practice, when I hear about neurofeedback, we're typically I'm thinking about kids with ADHD and helping them to focus better, right?
Right.
But it sounds like it's so much more than that. Like it's being able to be mentally and physically calm and present, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, people come in for all kinds of reasons. No one comes in because they want to be a nicer driver. But all of a sudden, when they're calm and alert, they're just more present, calm. They have the opportunity. What happens with neurofeedback is that the brain builds in this pause so that the person can respond to things as they want to and not just react. So with that slight pause
Mm.
that's built in, kids can decide how they want to respond and not be as reactive.
Okay, okay. So it's like lengthening the fuse kind of, right? Like,
Absolutely.
which I
Or
describe
kids,
yeah, I describe this a
yes.
lot to my patients, like lengthening that
Okay.
fuse that they have.
Yes, there's more bandwidth. I mean, if you think about a
Mhm,
saturated sponge, you can't pour more water on a saturated sponge. It cannot soak it up.
mhm,
Neurofeedback is like taking a saturated sponge and wringing it out so that they have more bandwidth to respond to life.
mhm, mhm. Okay. So what are some, like, conditions that you commonly see come into your practice or, like, diagnoses or learning disabilities or anything?
So I can tell you, like, working with 5-year-olds to people in their 80s, no two people are the same. No two brains are the
Yep.
same. So
Mhm,
the umbrella of things that we see here, lots of parents bringing kids in with ADHD or OCD or ODD, like really, and they've tried everything. Some people have tried medicine, some people haven't tried medicine. The difference with neurofeedback versus medication helps to regulate what's going on in the brain, but it doesn't teach it how to do anything different. Neurofeedback teaches the brain how
yeah,
to differently. So, yeah,
mhm,
ADHD, depression, anxiety, but people carry it all differently. Anxiety could be
mhm,
racing mental thoughts. You calm the brain, the mind can relax. A lot of people come in because of
mhm,
sleep. They cannot sleep or they
mhm,
can't get to sleep rather or wake up throughout the night. So if you're able to calm the brain, then you're able to whatever those behaviors are that they want to correct and heal.
yeah, yep. When you were describing, like, teaching the brain how to pause before reacting, another
Mhm.
thing that popped into my brain was trauma. Like, do you see a lot of people with trauma or PTSD?
Yes, I work with veterans, first responders, current active military, because they can't have medication. So, the part of the brain where you're really training with the PTSD is the parietal lobe. We can't start there. I usually start with the temporal lobes, which just helps the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain to communicate more effectively. And once we find that frequency, then we can add different sites, like the PTSD, early childhood trauma. That's in the parietal lobe on the right side. If you've got somebody with ADHD, we're going to have to get to the front left, but we can't start there because we have to double the frequency at the
Mhm,
left side of the brain. But that's your executive functioning, your focus, your motivation. So, each
mhm,
person that comes in, it is literally their protocol is based on exactly what they want to feel better about and then just fill in the blank.
mhm.
It's not, I'm not treating ADHD. I'm not treating anxiety. I'm literally training the brain so that those behaviors can calm or increase. If I've got somebody that doesn't have much motivation or they always are feeling low and they have to really work at being high, my job is to help raise their arousal level so that they don't have to work so hard at being happy.
Yeah, yep.
I have the best
Okay.
job in the world, I got to say.
Would you say are there I mean, you probably doing this so many years, there's probably, like, so many success stories, but are there any that kinda, like, stick out in your brain that are, like, really, really memorable?
I can say I sound like a drama queen and I will try not to cry every single day. all this is about success. Every single person,
Mhm.
they keep coming back because they're feeling better. I know I had this one little boy that I got to work with that he had tried neurofeedback at a different place, and they really didn't experience what the mom believed could happen with neurofeedback. And thank goodness they reached out. And, my love of working with kids, it was so much fun to watch him go from not liking school, not being like so reactive, couldn't focus, anger outbursts, to watching him, literally the dynamics in his entire family changed. And he was the one calming us
Wow.
down. Yeah. Like I'm not gonna, it was so much fun for him to come in. And, at first he didn't know me. He had tried neurofeedback before. It wasn't a great fit. And the fact that he trusted me and started feeling better, he started chatting. I mean, his whole being changed. I mean, now I get to see the dad, so it's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
It's really important that you brought up that not all neurofeedback providers, clinics, protocols, technologies are created equal. And
Right,
so I think for that reason, um, neurofeedback has, um, in a lot of ways, kind of been put in this like uh, junk science category or like gotten a
right,
bad rep,
right.
which is really unfortunate because if you find someone who's really good at neurofeedback, it can be so beneficial and life changing.
It is life changing, and I think if I were to suggest, when people are looking for a provider, it's my opinion that the science of neurofeedback is critical, but there's art
Mhm.
attached to it. There's an art connected with the science of being able to make those connections, of helping people be able to become the experts of how they feel and trusting themselves. And you can get a lot of a read on providers by sending an email. The type of response you're going to get, you're going to see a personality.
Would you say that is there like a difference in the quality of training of neurofeedback?
There are lots of different systems. Like mine is an infralow signet machine. And, so there are different approaches. There are 19 channel training. I think what the teacher in me wanted was the least invasive, overwhelming system. And so to have four sensors on your head versus
Mhm.
19, which 19 is incredibly effective, but to ask a 5-year-old to sit in a chair with a cap on their head with 19 channels sticking out, it takes forever just to get it set up. So, I did a lot of
Yeah.
research in that too. Of, is a 2-channel trainer as effective? Yes, it is. It might take a little bit longer than a 19 channel approach, but it really is specific to the need of the person that's coming in. If they want to, I do. I think that you have to be peaceful with the person that you're trusting with your brain.
Um, okay. What like your I don't know if you have like a typical like course of neurofeedback or it really varies person to person. But is like can you give us kind of an idea of like how often people do it and for like what period of time people are in this type of treatment?
Absolutely. So, one of the things people love about me is that I'm honest. And one of the things they hate about me is that I'm honest. And when they ask that question, which is a fair question, I have to say I have no idea because
Yeah.
everyone, like kids typically train out quicker than adults because their brain hasn't had as long to have those channels set. So,
Yeah.
typically, kids don't have to train as long. However, if their system, whether it's at school or at home, continues to trigger, then this is more like maintenance. It's kind of like the medication, it's just
Mhm.
maintenance. But if their system is healthy, then they can train out of this. I mean, the little boy I was talking about, he trained once a week for several months. Then we were able to go to every other week. My goal isn't to keep people in here for life. I'd love for them to be able to train out. And then after he went every other week, we started monthly, and then he didn't need it anymore. And that took over about a course of a
Mhm.
year. It's my suggestion that people train once a week because it's easier to follow the progress than if I asked, how did you feel 2 weeks ago? People can't remember what they had for dinner
Yeah.
last night. That's not fair.
Right.
So weekly sessions, when I tell people, let's monitor how long the session lasts. And they look at me like I'm crazy until they experience it. So I've got somebody who, they were very, very calm for 2 days. And then they woke up the next morning and they're like, oh, that's what she means. It wore off. The more sessions you have, the longer it lasts. And so, by going weekly, it can last the week. Then let's push it for 2 weeks. If it doesn't last the 2 weeks, cool. Let's come back on in. So a really long answer to your question. I have no idea how long it's going to last. My first responders, if they are working, this is maintenance. If they retire, this probably won't be. This would be as needed.
Yeah. So it's like it depends on how much are they being like continuously re-exposed to the stressor.
Yep.
And that's going to dictate like how often they need it, how long they need it.
Right. My police officers make fun of me when they first start because they, on average, they would get 2 to 3 hours of sleep. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. I'm not going to be okay until you're getting 6, 7 hours. And they think I'm crazy until they start sleeping without nightmares. It's unbelievable from my perspective to be able to watch people's journeys of life-changing things. I mean, sleep is huge.
Yep, absolutely. What about like if people live in an area where they don't have access to someone like you? I know that there's at-home devices. Like, what is your thought on that?
Are you sure you really want me to answer that? Okay, so the teacher in me would be like, absolutely not. Like even like when I'm training myself, because I need to have resets as well. When I'm training myself, I only do the temporal lobes. I don't even try to do the parietal lobe because I can't see the back of my head. So for an individual who's not been trained in neurofeedback to have a device at home freaks me out. And I can't help but be honest about that. Finding a provider, I would suggest looking for someone who's board certified. And there's, there are websites that you can look up providers and see in your area, like how far away is someone to you that's board certified.
And I think that's really good advice because, I've talked to a lot of people about the at-home devices because, unfortunately I live somewhere where we're like a desert for healthcare in general. And it's almost like I wouldn't want a patient to prescribe a medicine to themselves,
Yeah, exactly.
Not that people can really do that if they don't have a medical degree, but if they could, I wouldn't want them to do that, without the training. So
with the at-home devices, there are many people that do this and have success with it. Hopefully the person who provided that equipment is monitoring, is suggesting. I just think there's no formula that works across the board. It has to be completely centered on the need of that particular person brain. I am pretty opinionated about that, though.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Like people need to know that because, it seems like this is an area where there's not, it's not like the American Academy of Pediatrics is going to come out with a bulletin and say like, only do neurofeedback in a clinic, don't do it at home, right? Like there's no like unified guidance on that. So I think people need to hear that.
Well, I know that's part of being a teacher. Like I can't imagine how challenging it would be to teach online. I can't imagine, that human connection of being in the classroom or being in a neurofeedback office. That connection, that human connection is vital, of trusting and feeling as peaceful as possible.
What do you like? What's like your kind of dream for like where neurofeedback goes in the future, like in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh gosh. My dream would be that there are more neurofeedback providers. Like I never dreamed that I would open this business. And then I never dreamed that I would have a tech that's been working with me for 3 years. I knew that I was overloaded. I had a wait list that was so long, it was ridiculous. And I physically hurt for that.
Yep.
And so when Caitlin was able to come on board with me, we were able to get everyone off the wait list. I mean, now we're doing the same thing, but my dream is that there are more providers. I think it would be amazing if insurance would start covering it. That's a real,
Yep.
that hurts. I have to be able to pay myself. I have to be able to pay Caitlin, but I didn't go into this just to make money. But for people to pay out of pocket, that's hard because there are a lot of people that can't afford it. And that makes me sick.
Yep.
There were grants.
Yep.
People could get, my dream would be that this was something that was offered prior to giving someone medication.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I'm not bashing it because it's very effective. But if people could do this by healing their brain, that's empowering.
Absolutely. Yep. Instead of just like kind of treating the symptoms that pop up.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. I'm with you on that. Okay. Well, Rebecca, how can people find you?
Okay. So I am clinical partners at Sea Level Counseling and Wellness. And my bio and everything is on that website. They can always email. If people hear this and they have questions, I am 100% nerd on this and I love talking about it. So if they want to email me or if they want to call me, they're welcome to do that.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here and breaking this down for us. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for listening. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Little Brain Campaign podcast. If you've been enjoying our show, give us a follow on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. If you know someone else who would enjoy this conversation, please take a minute to share this episode with them and help grow our audience. See you next time.